said it's also illegal from the police station telling me that. And I was able to push us too fast. This girl will have to give us time. This is not easy for us to accept. Then that was such a number of fights. To do our job. Media, because it was just 16 days of activism from how many days back. I'm not a speaker per se, and then I'm not going to dwell on all the things that are not working. But I just want to remind us that we are making inroads. Yeah, it looks really, really difficult now. It looks like we are not on the track of what they call it now. We are not on the track of achieving our goals of having a situation where activists are working towards a better Nigeria, but we're actually on that path. And so yes, how are we on that path? And so we are holding the hands of the young people. I think 90-80% of the people in this room are young people. And I'm sure we do great whatever we are doing. That's part of what we are achieving. Some of us have been mentored, some of us mentored ourselves, some of us jumped into this space, but it was visible during NSAS that young people are taking up spaces, and so change is happening no matter how small. And then of course we are using technology more than we used to. I can't count the number of meetings I attended this year, online, virtually. That's changed for me. I almost want to say thank you to COVID, because I would have come to US like 3 or 4 times this year, but I did all I needed to do from Nigeria. And so yes, we are doing well in terms of using technology more. Then also we are pushing more, we are pushing our duty bearers more than ever before. So TEARS has been doing this for more than 8 years now. There are other organizations now. I have about 2 grants simply because my organization has an inclusive approach to work. I do not see the difference. I do not see human beings and I think anyone is different. It's a lie. We are all humans. And I tell them, LGBTQ identities are not asking you for different countries. They are not asking you for different laws. Yes, you can actually do that because I also spoke about positive discrimination. So because we put them under our feet all these years, government has to compensate them. That's that positive discrimination. That's the only place we differ. Apart from that, all rights are right and we must respect all persons. So we are doing more at pushing our duty bearers to the work that they have to do. And also we are also pushing society to begin to shift for women and girls. We are done shifting. They should shift for us. They should begin to shift. I'm tired of calling traditional and religious leaders, wasting money and putting them in hotels and they are not changing. So they should shift for us. And so we do loads of value clarification and attitudinal change transformation. Thank God, and IPAS funded us once. After that, they left us alone. So we are having our issues with them. But society actually needs to shift for women and girls, and then LGBTQI persons. We can't spend the whole of our life shifting for them. And then also we are interrogating data, existing data in whose benefit. We have to interrogate all that. There's a lot of work that's been happening in Nigeria since 2015 on work for LGBTQI persons, where Nigerians pick only MSN, drug users and sex workers to say all of them are living with HIV. I'm tired of the story. We are tired of those numbers they are manufacturing to tell us that every LGBTQI person, because it's disempowering. That's since 2015, nothing has changed. So we need to interrogate those data they are not pushing forward. We are human beings and not diseases. And then I also think that we're insisting more and more that abused women and girls and then LGBTQI persons should have justice. Perpetrators are not our brothers and sisters, they are our enemies. Let's take them to jail. And then also, there was one work that I was happy to be part of, and TEARS was part of it. We did a research where we are insisting that non-profit organizations should be registered from government documents where they are looking for people who are receiving money for insurgency and the rest of them in Nigeria. Civil society organizations, we are peace-loving people. They are not part of that space. Because what happens is that they are going to begin to register NGOs. They are going to have very draconian laws that we cannot have money from foreigners, and they don't give us money. We don't receive money from Nigeria. There are many countries where civil society organizations are supported because they understand that we are partnering for better society. If you are not giving us money, somebody is giving us money from somewhere. Why are you going to begin to register us because you think that we are being used to receive money for insurgency and all that? That has affected our activism. I have about 5 organizations that are on our organization as people. We serve as fiscal hosts because they can't receive money because they are LGBTQI plus organizations. And then now you want to add to the existing problem by listing us as problematic organizations. You have a challenge with that. And so I'm going to stop on that note and hope that our speakers today let's see how we are going to focus more on tackling those issues that make it extremely difficult for us to push for development in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I feel like there's so many remarkable things that Madam Ngozi said, and I think one of them that I really liked is that Friday has to shift for us. The kind of shifting for society to get this us. They have to shift for us and accept that LGBT persons, women, sex workers, we all have rights, right? Great. So I think she laid the foundation for what we're going to discuss in the 2 panel sessions that we're having now. And the first one is on legislation and religion as tools for advancing human rights. So she has spoken about what we need to do, how we need to put hands together to contribute to making sure that protect human rights in Nigeria. And now we want to look at it from two perspectives. How can we use laws? How do we use religious perspectives? How do we use these two tools to establish or promote human rights in Nigeria? And so I have 5 wonderful panelists. We need an extra chair here. For me, do you want me to stand? So I'm going to introduce my wonderful panelists. I'll read their bios and they will come up to take their seats here. I have the first person I have here is Kule Lawal. Kule Lawal is an entrepreneur, an idea generator, a politician, a TEDx speaker, and a patriot. He has a keen eye for opportunities based on his experience in politics, working with NGOs and the federal government. Kule is very, very passionate about Nigeria and is what he can term a detribalized Nigerian. He considers the boundaries to be limitless and is focused on changing the narrative in political participation in Nigeria. He is currently executive director of the Electoral College Nigeria. He has now transitioned into a non-partisan essential player in politics and electoral matters in Nigeria. Please one of the first two. Thank you, Alex. Okay, next we have someone who's matching with me today. Her name is Tawakal Kari. She's a multi-skilled development worker with experience leading design, creation, and allocation of communications projects. She's an expert in development communications, sharing impact stories, and employing communication channels to build profiles. She has worked on so many projects that focus on gender-based violence in the country, including the UN initiative, and she has worked with a global organization for its Make Nigeria Stronger campaign, and as program lead for Indigenous Africa, she managed the project on SBV and COVID-19. Currently, Tawakal has edited an anthology in her words that brought perspectives on African women from 7 African countries. Tawakal founded the Zavai Project and has published works across various platforms. She's the youngest member of the National Sector Community on CSOs in Nigeria and a fellow of the Young African University. She's also a member of the Commonwealth Youth Gender Equality Network, Ambassador for Africa for Her, and a 2021 champion. Please give it
Yes, Mama.
And then next on the list we have Nelson CJ. Nelson is a young Nigerian queer journalist who has written for various renowned publications and covered African LGBTQ stories, such as for platforms such as New York Times, Time Magazine, The End of US, Teen Vogue, with Teen Vogue, the Face Magazine, and other platforms. Please welcome Nelson. But I can't see very well. Okay. And then we also have Doris. Yes. Doris Italy is a lawyer with over 20 years experience advocating for the rights of vulnerable groups in Nigeria. She is the past General Secretary of the International Federation of Women Lawyers in Abuja and a part-time lecturer with the Institute of Development Administration in Ibadan, Oyo State. Doris has worked with several national and non-national NGOs towards advancing the rights of marginalized persons. Doris is currently the senior advisor for access policy and advocacy with IPAS Nigeria. In this capacity, Doris leads the monitoring and response of anti-rights groups and individuals in the country. She has engaged several stakeholders, including personal leaders, human with disabilities, youth, media, African minority groups, and the police to ensure that we protect sexual and reproductive health and rights in the country. Please give a round of applause. Last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Lucas Bowafonwa Kuyejo, I hope. He's a lawyer with 30 years experience in human rights and international law. He's a director of the National Human Rights Commission and coordinator of commission in Lagos State. He was a member of the Lagos State Staff Panel on SARS and Police Brutalities, NSARS panel. Lucas began his career at OAU, great to say. In 1992, when he obtained his law degree and was taught in Nigeria by 1993. Has a master's degree in law and a master's philosophy in law, and he's currently doing his PhD in law at Ibadan University. Because of saying the Technical Award in 2010, he has that's right. He has, he has attended intensive courses at the University of London and United Kingdom and platforms at the United Nations Office in Geneva, Switzerland, and has been the research person for several conferences across within and outside Nigeria, with focus on national human rights and international law in Nigeria. Please welcome Mr. Luka. I'm intimidated, like I don't understand. So
Anna Winter, is that you?
yeah, let's go like matching now. Look for the picture. So thank you everybody for being here and for listening. I feel like most people are outside of the room and I can't really see there because light is here. But if you can hear and see us, that's perfect. We're going to start the discussion now with, as we said before, the theme is religion and religion. How to use these tools to advance human rights activism in Nigeria. So I want to kick off by asking Mr. Kumila. I think we start on very basic, very basic things. Do you think that religious beliefs in Nigeria have been impacting the formulation of laws and policies that protect human rights in the country? Have they been influencing our laws in the first place?
Okay, when you look at Nigeria and you want to start to bother about its laws, the first thing I think you concern yourself with is how much distance the electorate and people who serve in the legislature are away from the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, before you even mention their religious or cultural inclinations. Yes, most of the time, I'm interfacing with people in the National Assembly, you'd hear people speak from a more cultural, I wouldn't want to use the word religious, I prefer to use the word cultural, because these are things that we built out of religion and translated in our own ways, which have become culture in Nigeria. Funny, if you even go to like Morocco and maybe Italy, you wouldn't have such situations in people practicing exactly the same religion. So I think it's more a cultural thought process in Nigeria. We've created an idea of what religion is and translated it into. And now, for me, I'd like to look at problems and discuss, just solutions. So first, the holy book of being a citizen is the Constitution. I know we're sitting down here. I can tell you that if you has anybody opened it here? The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Lawyers here,
Constitution does not belong to lawyers. But I need to tell you that. Keep it.
Yes,
Know that's
yes,
why.
sir.
Not
I'm
the
very
same lawyers.
sorry. I apologize.
So, Job chapter 2, and Job chapter 2 is not justice again. If you could use your phones and go to 15:2, as of chapter 2, section 15:2, subsection 2. Can anybody read that for us? I want to explain something, but I need to say this first. Can anybody just Google that and help us with it? 15, you said 15:2.
Accordingly, the national institution shall be actively encouraged, while discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnic, or linguistic association shall be prohibited.
Thank you, Earl. You want us to do that?
Okay. Accordingly, national integration shall be actively encouraged, whilst discrimination on the grounds of place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnic or linguistic association or ties shall be prohibited.
Beautiful. Now, chapter 2 is what carries the fundamental rights of the average Nigerian. smartness of the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it is not justiciable. Lawyers would explain this better, meaning how that means you can't argue it in court, or you can't argue it in court. So it now takes us to the most critical part. So it's not religion, it's not culture really. It is politics that directs how we do things. So if we do not care about the legislation, we do not care about political parties, we will always get back to the same situation.
Thank you so much for coming along. So what I hear is that we have a problem, right? Right here that we have a problem. Am I the only one hearing the problem that we have? That we have people who interpret religious texts to suit their own perspective, and religion is now skewed in terms of whatever favors who's in power at the time, and that influences our laws. Am I right?
It's true about the truth is that depending on who is in or who has political power, that will dictate the kind of laws, the kind of country you live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask now, I want to turn to this side of I want to turn to this side of mine. And ask like, for instance, let me ask Mr. Lucas, what do you think, sometimes our religious perspective is how we interpret things and then inform laws. As director of African Marriage Commission, you see how these laws are infringed daily, how Nigerians are suffering, and how Nigerians' human rights are being violated. What do you think is the impact of religion or cultural beliefs in the violation of human rights, and how does it come to play in your work? How do you see how religion influences human rights infringements, and how can we use religion also to implement human rights laws in Nigeria? It's a tough question, I know.
I would say it's not so much a tough question, but I would take it through for what Mr. Kumila said about religion. Because what religion does is to form the culture of the people. When you say religion, we don't have just one religion. Nigeria is a very diverse country. It's diverse culture, diverse religion. But over the years, we've been able to get some kind of culture that is imagined. And well, you get your culture from your religion, your way of life, and influences. Because we have come together as Nigeria, different culture, different religion influences each other to build what I would call a Nigerian culture that is imagined. And that's Nigerian culture, like you said, religion plays a big role in influencing the culture that we can call the Nigerian culture. And religion plays a big role because though constitutionally we are a secular country, but we have diverse religion. And when you say religion is not just one thing. It's just the constitution contributes what people believe are diverse. Religions are diverse. Even in the so-called prominent religions, Islam, Christian, there are still variants, there are still interpretations, there are still differences. So you cannot just say, okay, this is religion, this is religion. It's very, the way people see it. Sometimes, that's why sometimes we say that religion is personal. To a very large extent. You can say it's personal. So we can say that, of course, because the way people think, believe influences our laws. Because it's people that made law. It's Nigeria people that are voted there. So whatever is going to come out is going to be influenced by the culture. And the culture is already influenced by the religion. So that is it. Now, talking about how religion can now be used to mold and make sure that people obey the laws, right? is where that is where you now focus on the custodian of the religious. They are the ones that are now try to move, because custodians of the religion, talking of pastors, imams, chief priests, or whatever, they mold the way people look at the religion, the way people accept it to a large extent. I will say to a large extent, not that people, it's not exactly. People are still free to take it or do it. That is the way it is. So, they mold it. So, it is now up to them to now bring it to the people that, okay, this is our religion, this is the law, these are the laws. The religion says that you must obey the law. Most religions anyway. You must obey the law, you must do, like some religion will say love your neighbor as yourself. So if you say you hate somebody, you are not any religious. According to a religion that says that. So you can use that, so that you can preach law, preach to preach whatever you need to bring people to obey the law. Yeah, I think that exactly.
So just giving practical examples of ways that this has sort of played out. When the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill was first introduced on the floor of the House, Senator Yusuf said that he cannot in good conscience support the bill because of the word equal in the bill. Gender, Equal and Opportunities Bill. So they should remove the equal and put Gender and Opportunities Bill, and then the bill could have its support. Because how would you say that men and women are equal when per his own religious belief, men and women are not equal, and so it fundamentally goes against his belief to assent or to give support to a bill that uses the word equal in that sense. So, when we say that Nigeria is a secular country, it always makes me laugh. Because the farthest thing from the truth. At the very least, Nigeria is a multi-religious society, and we can't lie to ourselves and say that we don't bring those beliefs, our religious values, our cultural values into the rooms that we enter. And so it's foolhardy to expect difference from even our lawmakers who are making the decisions in our behalf.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with that. And I think I was going to get there. We're going to get there, just hold on. But I like the fact that you give us an example of how religion impacts real-time lawmaking, how our lawmakers are there and they are influenced by their religious beliefs, their religious perspectives, and how they interpret text. I want to ask, before we get into the really dark things, I want to ask you guys, do you think that religion can have any positive impact on our laws in Nigeria? Any positive one at all? I just any good thing by interpreting religious text in Nigeria for lawmaking that supports human rights?
Thank you very much. I think our first argument was to start by saying, I think it was Ngozi that was saying something. That's, yes, we all agree here that the Constitution is the ground law of the society. That's Nigeria. Let me put it that way. Our Constitution says to be our ground law. And the Constitution actually says in Section 32 that everyone is equal and cannot discriminate against any person on any ground. So, for me, whenever I read the Constitution, I feel we have a law that actually gives everybody the inclusiveness of everybody. Let me put it that way. The Constitution talks about freedom of religion, and thoughts, to say that you can actually believe whatever you want to believe. Let me put it that way. As in, you're free to practice what you want to do. Muslim, you want to do. Christian, or you want to do. Traditionalist, or whatever. But I think the major challenge we have, that I keep saying, it's in practice. In practice, in the sense that you have a law, but the people are the analytics. They are by the practice we do, because as it is in Nigeria, I was telling somebody literally, I said, when you fill a form, all you see there, I'm sure you don't read this. It's either you're a Christian or you're a Muslim. Am I correct? There's even no place for tradition. So no worshippers or all of that are definitely they are not included. So talking about an inclusive government. So when you talk about what has it has brought in any positive impact, I would say yes, I would say no. Yes, in the sense that, like I was saying, in some there's some of us who worked on the VAT law.
Live Act, you say yes,
Engaging religious leaders, I know somewhere, even the same religion we just spoke about now,
the person said,
FGM,
in the Islamic perspective,
you can cut partial of the woman's sleep.
Another section of the Islamic law says no, you shouldn't do it. So even within the religion, there's conflict. You understand? The Christianity will tell you, some people of Christianity definitely does not support FGM. You understand that there's nowhere in the Bible you can use to support to say FGM is correct. So in that aspect,
I am not willing with that law because we definitely had to include all of them there.
Yes, they agreed and passed that law to say something like FGM is like rape. They all committed to say yes, that no religious book actually agrees that rape is okay. When we come to places now like domestic violence, now you begin to see where religion plays in the role. And I think I tie that
to the fact that we have that tripartite system of law
in this country that allows both the criminal code, the penal code, and the customary law to operate together. I want to have such a system. I can decide now
to say I want to be
subjected to the customary law. Somebody else comes to say I want the English person, I want the English law, and that person says I want the Italian law. And I'm sure we know,
if you go to the north now, adultery is a crime. But if you go to the south, it's not. And what's in place is the Sharia law. So also, issue around drinking alcohol.
It's a crime in the north, but it's not in the south. So, whether I like it or not, the religious belief has a strong impact on our lives. It is based on the collective majority belief
that laws are definitely promulgated. So that's what I want to say. So
now I will say, like I said, it's a
yes and it's a no. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving us a nuanced perspective on how religion plays real time in lawmaking and how it impacts, whether for good or for bad, lawmaking in Nigeria. I want us to talk about specific groups of persons now, women, for instance. I want to come to our house. Like, what do you think? How do religion has influenced lawmaking that affects women? I want to look at it like holistically. How has religion played a role? Like, look at the Live Act. How has it influenced lawmaking and how in various ways?
Okay, so I mean, we don't even have to go far to answer this question. Wasn't it just this year that women were picketing the National Assembly because 5 gender-related bills were dismissed? You know, and so last year, I was actually in Abuja. I presented on behalf of a coalition to the Night Senate on this bill, you know, the sort of like corrections that we wanted. And to just see them kick all of it out and say no, it's like, none of these gender-related bills make sense to you. So we don't have to go far. That was this year in 2022, you know. And apart from the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill, there's also the Abuse and Administration Bill. There's the Indigenship Rights Bill. You know, there's so many of them that it's just clear that they're very focused on women. And so because of that, there's always one thing or the other wrong with them. Now, even with the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, I think as of now, over 29 states have both domesticated and assented. In some states, it's still on the, at the state house. And some are just waiting for governor's assent. So they're different places. But consistently, you'll notice that when you draw, state of emergency GBV does some sort of tracker on the map act in Nigeria, and they use a map outline. And it's always very glaring when you look at that map that some parts, the parts that are blue are in the south. And the parts that are red, that have either not passed the bill or not assented to the bill, they're in the north. And it would be a lie to say that religion does not sort of play a role into that. So I think it was Madam Ngozi that was saying that the penal code allows for you to discipline your wife. So it goes further to say that you cannot inflict bodily grievous harm. That's the word he uses. But then who defines what grievous harm is? What if you slap me, I can faint? And then another person needs you to actually hit them with a stick before the faint. So it just leaves it open to interpretation, and each individual can just define. what they see as grievous. Even the same Nigeria that you hear that a man killed his wife because she made pap and it was watery. I'm not making this up. It actually happened, you know. And these stories are all around us, right? And they are very largely sponsored by religion. But I'm also going to align with what Mr. Kunilawal said, that it's religion. I'm a Muslim, for example, right? It's religion, but mostly it's just culture. So because you see some things that people even make law and say the religion says, but when you interrogate it and go into the nitty-gritty of it, it's not the religion that says that. It's your interpretation based on your culture and your understanding of how your culture tells you to live that makes you say, oh, this is how this religious text should be interpreted. So when you talk to somebody on this side, they're saying something completely different from somebody on that side. It's not because they don't understand their religion as much. It's because in both cases, culture has influenced how these two very different people with different backgrounds and different perspectives understand this culture. So definitely, especially as it concerns women, in Nigeria, and the two predominant religions are both, they are equal offenders, and there's none is worse than the other. Both religions, even when they don't say outrightly, couch their messages, and even the way that they show up in ways that say that, oh, this is superior and this is inferior. And this is man, this is woman, right? And because for a lot of us, even for people who think that, oh, it could never be me, I'm not susceptible, religion actually plays a lot of role in the way that we think in our programming, except you deliberately make an effort to say, you know what, even when I'm told this, I'm going to think through it, and this is my thought for myself. But for most people, you know, you meet somebody and they seem to be very progressive until you get into the nitty-gritty of gender equality, and they are saying things like, are you not educated? Are you not exposed? They are, but there are also people who have constantly been told certain things, you know. So that goes beyond even our lawmakers to us ourselves. And that's why I think that, you know, so we have the BAP Act, for example. And I have to say that Lagos State is doing excellently well when it concerns, so my field particularly sexual and gender-based violence. And Lagos, I mean, there's always so much more to be done, but Lagos is doing really, really well. I mean, responding to LGBT in Nigeria. Ekiti is doing really well. And in the north, I think Jigawa is really trying. But even in Lagos State, where the law supports you, I mean, the Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency is very responsive. If you call them, they'll actually come. And although our legal process can be slow, that's not one agency's fault. They actually help you move this thing forward. Lagos has quite a number of convictions when it comes to LGBT. There's a sex offenders register. If you have that too, you know. But even in the same Lagos, where the law, no, I'm saying that even in Lagos where the law is responsive, because of how our religious and cultural values have trained us to think, people don't leverage the law, you know. So the law says that if your partner beats you, come and report them. We will deal with them on your behalf. But your religion says that you cover your spouse, you shield them, you don't shame them. You know, so even when the law says that you can lean on us, religion says that God wants you to do that. So you find that some people are going to be willing to leverage the laws that are available, but there's always going to be that group of persons that say that, you know what, let me just leave it to God, or let me pray about it. And why are they thinking that way? Religion. So even when, so it's not just that the laws are not enabling, even in cases where they are enabling, we have to actually figure out how to ensure that people's religious programming are not affecting them from actually leveraging these laws for their benefit.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. That was really an analysis of how women are suffering under the ambit of religion in Nigeria. Now let's go to queer people. Imagine Nigeria. I'm going to ask you, Nelson. Nigeria here now, we have laws that are criminalizing various levels of queer identities, cross-dressing, same-sex marriage, contraceptive acts in adults. How do you see religion as being the champion of these criminalizing laws? How does religion play a role, and how does religion keep queer people criminalized in Nigeria? That's what I want us to discuss now.
So I'm going to build on the things that basically what I said. I think that very importantly is as much a cultural thing, also very religious. But I think it's more religious than culture, because I think that with our colonial history, many things that we think are cultural are derivative basically from these fundamental these religious ideas and these religious dictates. So the way that, for instance, sexism works, really, historically sometimes you have women having a bit more power before religion came in and said, no, this is not how it's supposed to be done. by this book, by this religion, there are different dictates that go with it. I mean, women could marry other women to sort of offset child-bearing practices in the past, which obviously by religious standards would be ridiculous and impossible to do. So which I think religion is huge, plays a huge role, and I do also believe that as it concerns queer people, and in my experience of reporting and just observing how this thing has played out, religious authorities and religious figures have such immense power. They have an incredible amount of power over how people think, over what they think about, and how they decide to interact with themselves, with their families, with their friends, and especially with their children. And you find in churches, the pastor will say things like, "Oh, if your child is queer or something like that, this is what the Bible says, discipline them." Of course, there is no nuance to that conversation. There is no extent to it, which is why you find lots of queer people, where either they come out to their parents or they're outed, always often get either they have to run away from their homes, or they're actually put out of their homes by their parents without fear or regard of how they're going to fare. And these things are hugely embedded in religious dictates. When you're having arguments with people, like everyday people, progressive people, as you said, like people you assume would, understand or try to come from a very objective point of view about there's a difference between what this belief says, and in the sense that it can't apply and shouldn't apply to everybody because it's not everybody who actually aligned with that in religious belief, right? You find that they still go back to things like, oh, but the Bible says, but the Quran says, and because these religious materials really are strong influences in their lives, and they're very difficult to let go of, very, very difficult. And so I would say definitely religion really influences. I also remember just around the time that the former president, Jonathan, passed and signed the accessibility bill into law. I remember I think he was on CNN at some point. He would often get invited to come and talk about his thought process, why he did that, and then his arguments would often be, "Oh, this is what the people wanted." These are lines our religious beliefs, our religious cultures, and he could always constantly refer back to that. And just as we mentioned earlier about the chastism between the laws and the people, really fundamentally, the laws often don't mean anything if everyday people aren't aligning with it, if you can't be defended by everyday human beings, right? And it's like, you can literally even pass a law that says, queer people are, it's legal to be, to express as queer people, all that stuff. But if everyday human beings are still listening and are still abiding by law, by religious dictates that says actually, which is exactly one of the things that we're seeing in the US right now. It's like, this is an incredibly, obviously, like, on face value, very progressive, but the conservative, the senator was literally crying because just at the idea of queer LGBTQI plus people actually having their rights and being and actually not put to chance or and it's like that's just ridiculous. But obviously in her own mind and by her own dictates, if she had the power and the authority to ensure that her own beliefs are made general and applicable to everyone, she would do that. But if you think about it, this is something that only applies to her own experience, her own beliefs. And then something I think is very important in the way that religion plays out and the way that we interact with religion is privilege is a huge, huge factor. The way that your average person can abide with Christianity or Islam, because fundamentally the base of it is once if the portion of your life's concerns are taken care of, just the portion of it, your mind is often prone towards being able to accept other beliefs and abide with them. And so if you can do the barest minimum, you have a house, stuff like that, you're able to actually comfortably continue to abide and align with those religious beliefs, because the hope is that they can continue to protect you, they can continue to make you better as a human being. You really don't have anything to lose in terms of like thinking critically about what you believe in and why you believe in those things. And yeah, so to answer the question, simply is definitely religion is such a huge factor. And but by the byproduct of people who are at the top of the hierarchy, the pastors, everybody else, yeah, it is a huge one, definitely.
Thank you very much, Nelson. And I think what you shared also makes me realize that people pick and choose what applies to them. So religious people will say, Muslims no drinking, but they will drink and smoke. When it comes, they'll fornicate too, like having sex. When it comes to people, they're like, no, that's wrong. The Christians will have abortions when it's their turn. When it comes to like, no, Bible says that's wrong. I mean, they pick and choose what applies to them while expecting you to follow the rules that they don't follow. That's a privilege. Thank you very much, Nelson. So I wanna add something. Please go ahead.
So sometimes if I haven't lived across Nigeria, I'm scared of what I hear. So first and foremost, I need to say this. The perspectives across Nigeria are always different. Everybody thinks differently of the other person. And for me, that's one of the biggest problems in Nigeria. So once somebody starts talking, I can tell whether you were raised in the South or I can immediately tell. Because you show me your bias when it's community. I'm not saying anybody did it here, I'm just explaining wait, I didn't say anybody did it here. So northern Nigeria, funny, I think Madam Lagos said something, and I want to keep you off that first. Northern Nigeria, yes, can the Hizbah stop you or stop someone who's square and undressed? Yes. But funny, this is coming from a society that actually allowed people with other sexual preferences preceding colonial interference to move around freely. And they were a known thing, even within the Emir's palace in Kano. So it is really shocking that we dilly-dally, and we've always done that in Nigeria as human beings, on how laws are applied and how they are not chosen to be applied at different points in time. I would say, and the reference is to, if anybody wants to know, the Dan Daudu crew. And it was a common thing in northern Nigeria. It was a common thing in Kano. So now, why would the Hizbah all of a sudden act in a particular way because somebody said America is the one bringing this? But yet, within their own culture, it perfectly exists. The point I'm trying to make is that we have always been selective with how we see things in Nigeria. Of what you're saying, we're selective totally, and I understand the privilege. Most of the time we see things based on how we choose to see it at a particular point in time to play our particular perspective.
I'm going to ask you that what gaps do you think exist currently in Nigerian human rights laws that you can use religious beliefs possibly to address to create inclusive laws for everybody? Are there any?
Okay, first, I think when we start this engagement, we always skip how it all started. And if we were to go to where it started, it might not be a too nice thing to say, but let's go there. Well, electoral college is not receiving grants from anybody internationally, so I can speak freely. First and foremost, preceding colonial intervention in Nigeria, women had super rights. 1923 about women riots. Fela Kuti's mom, Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, and her Ibadan trouble led to the 1946 Masterson Constitution, which virtually interfered with a lot of things. Hence the problem Nigeria has today. So you see, it was altered by the people that are now trying to defund correct out. That's the problem. Anyway, this problem started because of domination and because we had seen that women were actually strong in Africa And they knew that if the women reacted, the men went berserk. So what they did was take power from the women, and the men went berserk. But that was because they were trying to colonize us. Now they want us to leave. Anyway, so we need to first get there. So what are the gaps? The first thing is everybody sitting down, not everybody, okay. Most people, 94% of Nigerians do not know their rights. First problem. The second problem, our translation of, okay, so I think with new media and with, new things that we see, our assumption of freedom of speech is that we feel that everybody is free to say anything. No, your freedom of speech is limited exactly to where it does not infringe on the human rights of another person. And we need to understand that. Until we get that in Nigeria, we're going to continue having bow and arrows across north, south, Christian, Muslim, this, that, this, island, mainland, you guys do it. And a lot of other places. We're going to keep doing that. So that's the second gap. The third one, I think it's because, like I always say, we can have these conversations from now to tomorrow. So we filtrate. Yeah, I heard what Tower said about a particular honorable saying because they should remove equal inside it. But who puts in there now? It's also us now. If we do not care, and I'll tell you something, don't care about your president. Everybody says good luck signed this law. It wasn't good luck that signed the law. It was the National Assembly. The president just assented, which is what happens in a democracy. It has nothing to do with good luck, Jonathan. It is your National Assembly. Until we get to that part in Nigeria, you see all these laws, talks that we are doing. We need to get the right people into that thing. How are you going to improve these things? People need to join political parties. It sounds like what I'm saying is stupid. But trust me, that's the way. And if you check countries that have advanced with rights for people, it's people that join political parties, got into the law, you infiltrate, you break the system, and you get these laws passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So are you guys hearing? Join political parties, get your voter's card, and vote in the elections, right? Not just the elections, from every level. State, senatorial, local governments, go cast your votes, right? So now I want to ask Mr. Lucas, as the NHRC does its work, what do you think can be done more in implementing human rights laws to benefit everybody? Everybody, meaning straight people, queer people, who live with disabilities, women, poor people. How do you think laws can be better implemented to benefit everybody, human rights laws?
Yeah, before I go into what you asked specifically, let me comment on the trend of questions and answers and comments I've been hearing. Actually, sometimes the answer to a question is just not a yes and a no. You need to do some in-depth analysis to say, okay, this is the way it is. Like I mentioned before, Nigeria is a diverse culture. It will actually be wrong to say that even pre-colonial and colonial, because we don't have a country called Nigeria pre-colonial. There's no country, there's Yoruba, there's Igbo, there's Hausa, and each society, each region, whatever we call it region, each ethnic group, even the ethnic groups are diverse, they are different cultures, have different levels of freedom for women. You can't say because maybe in Yoruba land, women have a level of freedom that is higher than even pre-colonial. You can't say it's the same in Igbo land or in Hausa land at the same time. It's not. Even pre-colonial. So when you are putting things in perspectives, there are different levels. It's not the same. So when you say, okay, but let me go to the issue of the law and the way the law is being promulgated in Nigeria. like somebody said, the culture influences our politics, and politics is a game of numbers. And the kind of people that you get, that you vote, they are going to determine the law and how you are governed. Now, if you look at the caliber of people that are that make laws in Nigeria, you do in-depth analysis of each one of them, you can know the level of their understanding, of their knowledge, of their basic education. Then you know why you are getting the laws you are getting. For somebody to say that, okay, you have to remove equal, because my religion say men are not equal, basically you know that the person is listening at a very low level, because no two persons are equal anyway, whether man or woman, whether woman, no two, where you are talking, because no two persons are, because he's looking at it as the sameness. It's not about sameness, it's about equal treatment, equal opportunity, equal everything, being given equal treatment, equal opportunity, being treated equally, equal opportunity to everybody. This person is like somebody figured out in the laws. You don't say, okay, man has a right to beat a woman. That's illegal anyway. It goes to the root of the fact that you are saying that the man cannot do any wrong. So what of if the man too does something that is wrong? The woman have the power to beat the man? It's not as if man and woman are same, or even two men are the same, But we must be given equal power, equal level playing ground to operate. That is what the law is saying. That is what the word equal means. It's not about sameness. Nobody is same. Nothing is same. That is the truth of the matter. But when you now begin to look at it from even the religion that he is quoting, that is based on its interpretation. It's not talking about you. It says you treat people equally. You are not biased. You give people equal opportunity. That's the basis of law. That's the basis of justice anyway. And justice is the bedrock of a sane society. That is it. So until people begin to understand this common sense level of reasoning, then we are going to be having problems with passing same laws. Now, let's look at even as the Child Rights Act. We found out that in some parts of the country, till today it has not been passed. While even in some places that it was passed, it is being tinkered with. They are tinkering with it. When the law, because this is a domestication of the CPC, child's rights, it's not CPC, CRC. Child Rights Convention, exactly, is what we are trying to domesticate. Child Rights Convention. And now you cannot domesticate the law by diluting, by removing the fundamentals of the law. When somebody is a child is a child. And there must be a definition of who a child is. That's the fundamental of the law. Who is a child? So when you begin to redefine a child according to what that convention, contrary to what the convention says, then you are not really going to, there's a problem. Even with our constitution. When the constitution says that, okay, the constitution puts it the age of a child at 18, but it now went further to say that somebody that is married is automatically an adult. So which means that if you marry a 9-year-old, then the 9-year-old should be treated as an adult. That's what it's saying. And it's still there till today. So like I said, the politics decides a lot of things and the kind of people that you put there they are going to determine a lot of what you get. Things that needs to be changed need to be changed, and until you put the right person, and it's not just about the presidency. Just like you pointed out, presidency is the lowest part when it comes to lawmaking. You just have even if the lawmaker say this is the law, if it says no, they can veto it. They can override its veto and still pass the law. That is what the Constitution says. So it is about the majority. Who are the majority here? So if the majority are still selecting people that doesn't have the basic knowledge of what a law, what the way the world is moving, then you will still have backward laws.
Very much. I'm going to play this focus. Okay, I think you want to add something to ask your question. Okay, what I want to ask you is, I want us to look at it specifically in terms of SRSR laws. I know how religion plays a big role in limiting these rights. What ways do you think we can adopt to expand how these rights are implemented so that women, girls, young people can have access to their rights without religion limiting it? They can also act on them.
Alright, so I think the first thing I want to say is that the gap I see, one gap I see that in Nigeria, I don't want to use the name, don't let me realize it, but I keep asking myself, do we really understand what human rights are? So it's a question, maybe definitely at times, I believe that we need to answer this question. A policeman now, at times when I do training for police, one thing I keep letting them understand that you're not a custodian of your religion. You're not a custodian of culture. You are a custodian of the Constitution. And I realize that what we all just said now, even you somebody being in the police force, in his mind, he has read he knows the Police Act, he knows what everything says, but in practice, he practices outside what the law says. His religion affects now, if he catches a criminal, what he thinks that if he sees a mob actually mobbing a criminal now, as far as he's concerned, okay, he's told, and my religion feels this is wrong, so he can go for it. So there's this pick and choose on human rights, you understand, in our understanding, particularly among, like say, the people who definitely are supposed to implement this law. So I think there's still need for us to continue to educate, to sensitize them, let me put it that way, on the principles of human rights. Nigeria is a signatory to, like we just said, a lot of these treaties we're talking about. But really ask yourself, truly speaking, how much of it really affects us? And maybe that's why, like you say now, that putting that section 10 or 12, saying that for all things you sign there, you must domesticate it here before it becomes effective. That alone have told you that a barrier has been created to tell you now that unless we agree, you can go and sign, because that's like a film show. You just go there, you sign because you know that when you come back, you will not do anything about it. So that's the issue even concerning women, or concerning persons with disability, or everyone we're talking about. Because I actually realized one pertinent thing, and that thing is the fact that for a young boy, even while growing up, you're already being told that you and a woman, a girl, you are not the same. You understand? And if you grow up with that mentality, there's no way in any form that you definitely see a woman as equal. And like we said, I don't want to say, in our culture, religious, social, the way we're socialized, you have come to actually believe that definitely this person is subservient to me. So when I'm talking or I'm saying to you that this is what I said, that we have a law that I don't believe that we believe in it. That's my personal opinion. We have a law in this country, even our constitution, which people have not really believed that your constitution is supposed to be above your religious belief and your cultural belief. You understand? But we've not gotten there. So what we just have now is a paper thing that is just we're talking about inclusiveness. But in reality, that is not the situation. So when you talk about SRHR now that you just spoke about, like I asked a question of Fuller's identity. You see even religious practitioner people, when they come and you give them even the data to do, and you're asking somebody, if a father have sex with his daughter, and this girl becomes pregnant, and this girl says, I don't want, even in society we're talking about now, religiously, let's be frank and sincere. When I ask that question, I say, how many of us as religious people would definitely want your son to marry that girl? You'll just be hearing from the start, it's not my portion. It's not my portion. So we just live in denial that these things actually happen. But they actually happen, they are there, and they are with us here. So until we begin to see some of the emerging things that are coming up and begin to come proper solutions on what can be done, and like you just said now, if we have sexual reproductive health and rights, which are putting there as rights now, that young people understand that this is what the law says, and like you said, we have signed into a lot of protocols, and maybe that is part of the reason why we don't even want to demonstrate it, because we don't believe in them. So until that is done, that's why I believe that right now it's young people that actually own the sphere now to make the change they want to see. So I don't believe any girl should be downgraded because you want to talk about the back law, but I keep saying you have a law there that talks about perpetrators, you keep sending them to jail. What about the person, the victim, who definitely maybe as a result of that rape, as a result of that incest, that person gets pregnant? What do you do to that person? It's a fancy abandon. I think we all saw the video viral of the 13-year-old girl who was impregnated by a 75-year-old man. How many of us saw it in Lagos? Yeah. And the girl was abandoned with the baby. You understand? Was abandoned with the baby. And you're telling such a girl that, truly speaking, this is what this one says. I don't know. It's crazy. So I believe it's time right now that young people, every one of us, should begin to see these things. And like I said, documentation, it's a big issue. Because you meet these people and you're talking to them, and some of them are wondering, I think it was Ravi that was saying that they're asking Obasanjo said there are no less kind of people in the country. Because definitely issues around documentation, issues around evidence, we are not bringing them out. I think that's why for us as an organization, I think we take it upon ourselves to say there's need to begin to document some of these SRI challenges we are seeing, both for young people, both for adults, both for women and the marginalized people. So that whenever you're coming out and you're saying you want to law reform or you want a policy, definitely you are talking from a point of evidence. You understand how I just speaking. So there's a lot of that, but like I said, there's a lot of work for us to do. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
That was incredible, actually. I thought it was really good. One thing I also think is very crucial as we continue to think about what we can do to move things forward is to find a way to, I think a very important barrier with understanding and interpreting laws and the Constitution is literally in the language and how people understand it. So if you find usually when Americans are trying to pull, like to get our car or something, they often cite, oh, my First Amendment rights, obviously, and they understand that because it is delivered to them in the most understandable form possible. And so what I think that, obviously, with the way that the laws are written, that's a different conversation, but really how it is understood and how it is passed along, okay, so I think that is super crucial, and I think incorporating it in schools, in conversations, in online discourse is such a very important way to consciously ensure that everybody knows how this works, what this is, and what the boundaries are. And it can also help us when we're helping people who perhaps don't have the access to get to understand these things in real time, like the example you just cited. If there was a different language it was a way to say, okay, what this means is that now that these people have been arrested, you don't you can actually get another way to, or you can even sue them or something, or you can make certain claims to get get benefits, something like that. But just finding out having a way to really make these things digestible to the average person is so crucial.
Thank you so much, Nelson. I wanted to ask you a question. I have two questions, but one for you, one for ourselves. And I want to ask you, what do you think are the tools that we can use to adopt religion a way of advancing LGBT perspective rights in the country?
That's a very, that's almost, contradictory based on what we just said. But to be honest, I do think that religion has a very, has an important role to play. Because it is just, just imagine you own, say, product, right? And it's a new product, you need an influencer to market that product for you. Religion is that influencer. They have followers, they have the access, and they can get the word out for you quickly, with more conviction. Because really, the fundamental thing about religion is that people need, the leaders and the people who direct other people need someone to hold responsible, like in a subconscious way. And so it's like, oh, my pastor said this, right? My mom said I should do this. And so people need like an anchor. And so when you have these anchors, when we can really, when we can engage with these anchors and these pastors who have a bit more accepting and inclusive ideas. I watched a video a few months, this week, where a black pastor in one of this American, like a black church, was really talking about, obviously, if you know that, black churches in America are deeply conservative when it comes to queer conversations. So we talk about everything else, activism, but when it comes to queer people, there's like a hush-hush thing, which is really funny because like it's queer people who are like the choristers, the pastors, all that stuff, right? And so it's like, what's going on? So right? So what I think is really crucial is speaking with, and what I also noticed was that the pastor looks young, which I think is cool. I'm not saying that older people should die. Obviously not. I'm not saying that, right? But what I'm saying is that, again, goes back also to the language. How you deliver a message is so important beyond even just the message itself. So because it's like sometimes even how we engage with like traditional rulers or anything like that, or it's like sometimes you don't get it. It's like you're telling them, oh, but the law says and should, but what does that mean for them in real time? It has to come from a place of why should they care about this specific thing. And so if you can actually reach those influencers and those people that can get the message back to their audiences, if you can engage with pastors and be like, just to be clear, this is the danger that your sermon has caused over time, right? And this is how you can do better in talking with your people. This is how you can, beyond just preaching with them everything, this is how you can actually host workshops with your church members and say, how can we become better Christians and better Muslims? How can we become beyond just saying, oh, giving to your people, how can we behave differently? What do you do when you have this conversation, what do you do when your child comes across as, say, oh, they're queer or something? What happens when there's this issue of like rape or incest, something like that? Have this important conversation, have tools, give them tools to be able to, or even at the very least, the language to be able to understand what is going on. And so, someone talk very quickly. The easiest and the quickest place to go would be to the influencers, the people who have the most authority over their followers, and who those followers listen to and who they will accept their work.
Thank you very much, Nelson. I believe that it's very important for us to have feminist people in religious spaces, because if you don't have religious spaces, they won't listen to us. So thank you very much for that. And now my final question, it's a big one for our house. It's like I'm asking someone who is in the world.
You better be, girl.
How are there any avenues that we can adopt to interpret religious text to achieve inclusive human rights laws? Basically, how can we use religion to have a better Nigeria, better Africa?
Okay, but if you would allow me, before we go to that, I'd like to say something about what Madam had said earlier. You joked earlier saying that, whoo, you feel hopeless. And while that was a joke, I'm sure that a lot of people also feel that way. So I just wanted to say that, especially when it comes to sexual and reproductive health, right? We are in the gutters in so many ways, yes, but we're also out of the gutters in so many other ways. I mean, just in 2013, 9 years ago, Nigeria had only one sexual assault referral center that provided holistic medical and psychosocial support to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. Today, we have about 30, I believe, across the country. 17. Okay, but there are other centers, maybe not really, so many centers, let's just say one-stop centers. We have over 30 across the country. And it's still very small when you think about the fact that Nigeria houses over 200 million people, but we're coming from 0 in 2012 and 1 in 2013. I think we've done something, we've moved forward quite a bit. And because of that, I mean, just Mirabel Center, when you think about it, Mirabel Center has been in existence since 2013. At this time, Mirabel Center has responded to over 7,500 cases of sexual and gender-based violence. That's 7,500 people that would have otherwise not been able to access care. That's 7,500 people that have been going around with unresolved trauma without professional support. And because that sexual assault referral center exists, they have the support that they needed. And that's just one sexual assault referral center. Now multiply that by 30 one-stop centers. And you have humans across this country who, yes, they had trauma inflicted on them that they didn't deserve to. But because this space exists, because of our advocacy and our continued work, every single one of us, whether as activists or as citizens, we have the centers and now respond to these cases. So it's bad, but we're moving forward, and that's something to celebrate.
Love it.
Yes, we are.
Yes, fine.
So interpreting religious texts to advance human rights. I'm going to just piggyback on what Nelson said. I think it's important, and what you said too. Just having the right people in the room, I think, is a lot. So if you see, there's actually a change in the conversations that we're having. It's very mild, so maybe that's why we're not noticing it. But even a few years ago, these are not conversations that people had in public and religious spaces. But now people are having it, maybe not as conversations, maybe as arguments, but they are being had. You know, so I read a post sometime, I think about 3 days ago, where there was a gathering of Muslim women. And apparently a young Muslim woman asked the speaker that, showed the speaker that she's a feminist. That so why she expected to cook, sweep, clean while her husband is dead, that he's an invalid, that she has to take care of him. You know, and so maybe the answer that was given was still leaning on religion, but she had the guts to ask that question. Even a few years ago, that wouldn't have been possible. So while we feel that, oh, all of this is, you know, because when it comes to conferences and talks, it can be easy to feel like we're always talking. But these talks do things. They re-engineer people's minds. They help people think differently. They make people question the things that they see as norms. And guess what? Because those people do not exist as just individual entities. They exist in community. They take those new ways of thinking into their homes, into their families, into their schools, into their communities, into their religious houses. So before you know it, we might not agree initially, but we're having conversations, or at the very least, we're having arguments, which means that we're saying that your way is not the only way, I will talk my own way, you know? And because of that, we're questioning. So I think that let's not leap into this new thing first. Let's even question the old, right? As opposed to before, where people who were in the minority were just keeping quiet. They didn't agree, but they didn't also feel empowered enough to say exactly what they thought. Now, more people feel that way. Now, more people are questioning their religious leaders. You know, our parents, my mother, sometimes things happen, and my mother says, usually people have spoiled the world in our generation. Yes. You know? Yes. Which is a good thing. And that's because, yeah, exactly. Like every extension. I tell her that today, if I ask your father, you'll probably say something about your generation. You know? And that's happening, and that's changing things. Because we are challenging them. You know, when I talk to my dad about some things, like, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but please leave me alone. You know, like, don't ask me to do it, but if you want to do it, then that's totally fine. You know, so it might feel like not a lot has changed, but a lot has changed because even our parents, we're having these conversations with them. And even while they might not agree on some things, they do agree with us on some things. You know, I hear my mom say some stuff, and I'm looking at her like, well, where did that come from? You know, and she's like, well, you people have some points sometimes. You know, you might not agree on everything, but you do make some good points. It feels very small. But imagine me and my family, you and your 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 church, you and your mosque. And before you know it, we're creating a community of practice where we're taking the knowledge that we're getting from each other, we're taking it into those places that are one way, and we're challenging norms. We're challenging how things are done. We're challenging how things are being thought of. I'm thinking of, look at Nigeria in 15 years. I don't expect things to still be like this in another 10 years. It may seem like a long time and it's slow, but things are changing and things will continue to change because we're adopting this individual and community mentality challenging things.
Thank you. My wonderful panelists, to come to the end of it, but we have 10 questions for us. Who's going to ask questions? If not, is that a hand? Okay, Alex, go ahead and ask your question. Hi.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I wish we could extend it and just stay in this room and keep talking. But I wanted to talk about, like, I understand that the change is not today, but like, considering where we are right now and the situation that we're in, like yesterday I saw on the news that there's this cleric, Islamic cleric that was sentenced to death for blasphemy. And that was very interesting to me because it was like, there was this back and forth between the judge and him about the text, the Islamic text that he was interpreting in a particular way, and there was a disagreement. Basically the problem was how could he have interpreted this text in this way to his followers in this community. And they wanted all those places that he spoke at to be shut down. The cleric himself was not even having it. He didn't want a lawyer to represent him. He didn't want to even appeal. Like he said to them, sentence me to death, I will die a righteous person. I admire the spirit. I don't really know what the details of it was, but I'm just trying to say that if we're trying to engage religious leaders and say, this is the problem with the text that you're reading, how do we interpret it in a human rights-based way, even in situations like that where people usually die for interpreting it outside the context that is prepared.
Thank you very much, Alex.
I have a quick thought before. I just think the easiest thing would be to have, obviously, a resource bank available for that. So in terms of legal resource, or I think very, very importantly, of course, beyond just telling them what you're going to be, changing their minds and their intention, it would also be helpful for them to know that if something does, because again, there's always going to be resistance on the legal part and the politics part, obviously. So if that does happen, I think it would be very helpful if they know that there's a place they can go to for help, legal assistance, and even in, I think that would be very, very helpful, just to start with. Yeah.
Well, I think that was a very beautiful question. I actually admire that question was for me. Because, like you said, truly speaking, I was in Thailand and I was in an interfaith meeting where they were discussing on an FP on religious, religious people getting involved in helping people to increase uptake of FP. And I remember there was a young girl there that came from Nigeria, and she was asked to talk to to speak on behalf of the young people to the religious leaders of what they want. And I heard the girl was telling him that part of what we want, we don't want people to be judgmental to us. We want people to allow us to take the FP if we want. So she kept saying all the things that she wanted. And President picked the microphone and he said to her, is it that you think we don't know if we need this thing? We know. Is that what saying that some of these challenges you're saying we don't know? We know. But the thing is that we are confined by what we are supposed to be preaching. So we will not shift. Are you hearing me? He told her pop and plain there that we would not shift ground. This is what the Bible says, that for us, all we teach is abstinence. Every other thing, you can go and do. But this is what we want to preach. That was what he said to her then. So what I'm saying here, there are a lot of progressive religious leaders who want to speak, who wants to actually change some of this status quo. But they need our support. I'm telling you, they need our support. And that's one day I told my colleague one day, I said, we have to have gragra activists. And also have to have persuasive ones, the ones that are quietly just
entering, shifting ground gradually. All of us can't just be on the field. You understand? So in engaging them, as I'm saying, in engaging them, you see some of them actually saying, all we just need you to do for us, you understand? Support us in the sense that we might not say these things out, but we can actually give you the opportunity, you understand me, for people to talk about these issues. So we need to, every time, like I said, promote such people. You talk about killing. Terror. They live, actually, which word do I use now? People who abuse people actually live in, they use terror to silence people. You understand me? So when you're going even into this work that we are all doing, I'm sure all of us already know that your life is no longer your own. Your life is at risk. So it's part of the, how do I put it? Professional hazard, that's the word. You understand? So I just feel that all we just need to do to such progressive people that we see is to support them and make them if possible even see the changes based on what they are doing, the changes that is coming up from them. So as I said, stories of change. If somebody like that speak, one or two persons come out to say, oh, based on what he said, this was what I used to think before, but this is who I am right now. Yeah. And you just realize that gradually, the person will be growing muscle and will be winning more ground and getting more people to speak. So that's, for me, the way we can, but wanting to ever think that religious leaders would ever go away from the religious book, I don't fully. It's a very easy subject. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Every time I speak, I know I'm seeing like a kakami or something. But you said something very vital earlier when Madam Ehesi was talking. She said the fact that we have customary laws, penal codes, and the confusion. Which one are you following? So as much as I believe in democracy, that we must allow everyone, I also believe in restrictions for people that are learning the democracy. So we provided the fact that state legislature can allow people be tried by a particular law of a particular religion, even when it's totally against the constitution. That is, we are running a circus in Nigeria. Let me just tell you, they haven't told you the circus of confusion. That's what we're doing. I don't believe those things should exist. I'm sorry to say, if anybody is part of any religion, anyway, I'll tell you, my name is Kume Ibrahim Lawal. I was raised by a Catholic and a Muslim, and I went to both schools, so I can speak clearly. I've never thought that anytime religion and state come together, anything good comes out of it. You have multiple countries to explain this. Iran, the Crusades, can I go back? The list is endless. It doesn't work because it's absolute power. You're taking power of the spiritual mind and physical and state power exertion. So I think what should happen in Nigeria, and especially is that the country must rise above any other law. Till then, you can't get anything done in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions?
Just want to make a comment on his comments. Yeah, we are rounding up. Yeah, the problem with the Nigerian law is that we have the constitution which guarantees freedom of expression. Then we have some laws that actually, if you are to look at it, takes away that freedom of expression. If you put a freedom of thoughts, that you have the right to think whatever you like and express it. But what is the problem when the problem, I'm very sorry to say, especially when you have a religion that the tenets are incorporated into law, simplicity, it will create a problem. Because it will be looked at, okay, religion is by God. Now, that means that you cannot argue with it. This is the way it is. Based on the interpretation of maybe the majority that believes in that interpretation. which is not generally the same. And that's where the tyranny of the majority comes in, even when it comes to religion. Because religion is about interpretation. I've spoken to Islamic clerics. Real Islamic cleric that doesn't believe in this, what you call it, this law that has to do with wife beating, and this one that we just talked about now. The blasphemy. Because when you talk about blasphemy, it's about freedom of expression. The person is expressing something that he believes. Even as a Muslim, the majority doesn't believe. And that is where the conflict comes in. Now, because when you talk about blasphemy, you talk about, okay, you say that so when you say something against the prophet is blasphemy. The cleric was saying, okay, if you say that somebody said the prophet didn't do this and that, it's like you equalize the prophet with God and cannot do any wrong. And to him, the person that is even saying that is blasphemy, that the prophet is not God. They are the one that are blasphemy, that you cannot say the prophet cannot do it. It's only God that can never do any wrong. So that is where the two interpretations comes in. But now, that is that. But when you now come to the law, the constitution said is a secular country, and it's supposed to be a secular country. So any law that is, because religion is supposed to be persuasive. You're supposed to be persuaded, okay, you go to church, do this, do that, you either accept or reject it or whatever. But when it's now being made into a code, which is a law, and even the penalty is like a capital offense, as in this case, then that's where the problem. So I would like a situation, I want to see some of these cases come up to the Supreme Court. Because it's actually in confrontation with the Constitution that gives you freedom of expression of what you thought is right, of saying what you believe. That is it. Thank you.
No.
It's a short question. It's a very short question. Don't really have time, but okay. Allow. Just one question for the person that has had their hand raised, and that's it for this session. While they're giving the mic, announce it. Go ahead and ask the question.
Good afternoon. My name is Simon Lee. I think I disagree with you. Why?
Without really hearing you.
Okay, I disagree with Mr. Kundi Lawan. What he said that when religion and politics comes together, it causes confusion. No, that's not true. State and politics. Is it not statecraft? Is it not politics? Who governs? I don't know the politicians. You are talking about power.
Leave the semantics and let's ask the questions.
Hold on.
It's not a short question,
No, it's not. Let me get, like I said, that's a short contribution. Now, what institution of government was instituted by God? And we can see it. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. Now, God instituted, don't look at it as like in the Bible, there's the priesthood and there is kingship. The two work hand in hand. And there was no issue. I'm talking about the state of Israel that we have today. The state of Israel that we have today. Is that not combining the house of Aaron, the house of David, the lineage of these two generations work hand in hand? There was no issue at all. Now, contemporary times, look at the kingdom of Saudi Arabia today. Are they not mixing statecraft or power or what do you call it now? State with religion. No, hold on. The same thing is happening in Dubai. Now, if we have an issue with governance, it's not because there's a mixing religion and state is the problem. I want to recommend a documentary by PBS, God in America. Yes, watch it. You know the background of how the United States today become what they are. Is religion, the religious leaders, even getting them away from the British. It is the work, the contributions of the religious leaders that push the politicians, especially Thomas Jefferson. And today, it's still an issue in America. They are saying, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter before he died about religion and state.
Yes,
now they've mixed it together. Allow me to learn. They've mixed it together now that religion should be separated from the state. If critically, that's not what Thomas Jefferson is saying. Thomas Jefferson is not saying that mixing religion and state is the issue. That they should be separated. So it's a misconception.
Alright. Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much, my panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Now we are going to move on to the second. Please clap for them.
We love you.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to everybody in the audience for asking questions, for making your comments, for participating. Really appreciate it. Just come them again. Thank you.
We love you.
I like to sit down. I'm already getting tired. So I'm going to sit down. I have a few announcements today. The first is that you can get sexual health commodities here. Condoms, lubes, am I right?
Yeah.
Guidebooks, safety guide for free. Like no payment at all. Just go get as many as you want. What's my name? They'll give you.
Promo code.
You can also get water to drink, but outside because they have rules here that we shouldn't eat or drink within this
Auditorium.
what do you call this?
Auditorium.
Merci beaucoup. So we need to go outside. Do you want a water break? Anybody want a water break? Go and drink water and come back in 1 minute. No, we don't, right? I can hear no.
Smoke break. Smoke
I
break.
heard no.
Can we get smoke break?
I didn't hear yes. I heard no.
For water break.
So we'll move on to the second panel.
Well, I don't mind.
I have the privilege of introducing panelists. Thank you, Chindima and Toby. The panel will discuss the role of civil society in championing human rights in Nigeria. And I'm going to call my panelists now. I have here Tess Pepple. A lawyer, human rights defender, and feminist.
Yes, defender.
A legal consulting firm in Lagos, where she gives general public legal advisory to companies in Nigeria. Her human rights focused work aims at eliminating inequalities of friends and marginalized groups. Currently works on a US-sponsored project for CPHI and CHEERS that focuses on sensitive actors on how to enhance rights of vulnerable groups in Nigeria. Tess is passionate about different stereotypes and looking for their equality in Nigeria. She's also a member of the Institute of Data Mediators and Consultants in Nigeria.
Yes.
Okay, next we have Oluwatobiloba Ayodele.
Yes, Mama.
She's an African feminist writer with extensive experience writing about gender, African feminism, macroeconomic policies,
Where's she at?
at BSI, where she designed programs and advocacy campaigns on SRHR in Nigeria. She was also a computer coordinator at Akina Mawawa Africa, where she visibilized these experiences of African women, girls, and gender impacted persons. Oluwatobiloba got a first class from Caleb University. She's an African Feminist Academy alumnus and a Madam Epo Fellow.
Oh, nice.
graduated, bro.
She's that girl.
And next we have Justin Chigozie. He's the executive director of CHEPS, a youth-led organization working in Nigeria and West Africa that strengthens social justice for minority groups. He has over 5 years experience in child development and has led many human rights initiatives for queer liberation. Justin is very interested in youth engagement and justice. He has a bachelor's in mass communication from Imo State University and the alumnus of Global Fellowship. Please welcome Justin. And last but definitely not least, we have Acapel. Acapel Banisi self-identifies as a transgender woman.
Yes.
We are also matching. Acapel and I are also matching. Acapel is a human rights activist that's committed to promoting the rights of trans persons in Nigeria. She used her experiences to engage for access for human rights for all LGBTQ persons in the country. Acapel has considered programs like the PESA community led monitoring HIV center programs and also works for community persons whose lives are under severe threats. She continues to speak up for trans inclusion as high-level stakeholder platforms in Nigeria and grants interviews to UN bodies like UNAIDS and works for the treaties such as Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel. Also contributed to the Black Rights Commission program across Nigeria, targeted at addressing human rights violations in the country. Acapel is the ED of the Initiative for Rights and Equitable Access to Rights Nigeria.
Yep.
Ready, like, I can't believe I have this caliber of people in. I'm really lucky. So this panel discussion is going to be focusing on how civil society organizations can play a role in advancing human rights in Nigeria. In discussion morning, we talk about how human rights activism should be advanced or should be very focused in Nigeria, and then who does do that work, right? So at this point, we are going to engage in these young and vibrant, oh, that word, can I use the word here? Innovative, young, inclusive activists who are focused on promoting human rights in Nigeria. I'm going to start by, because from the first panel, I'm already getting hopeless. Honestly, I promise you, already, like all this happened in Nigeria. But I feel like we'll get some positive things in this panel, right? Am I right? Am I right? Fingers crossed. So I want to start on a very positive note by asking, should I ask Toby? Let me ask Toby first. Toby, can you tell me any successes that CSOs have had in promoting human rights in Nigeria? Let's start in positive notes. So look to the back and say they've done this, so maybe we can do better, right? So can you please tell us whatever successes they've had?
Okay, thanks also for that question. I hope you just that. You will. I think CSOs have been like the backbone of Nigerian struggle. We've done a lot coming from pre-colonial era. People were holding government accountable, those that were put in governance to make decisions for them. People held them accountable in one way or the other. Come to the colonial era, you saw people like Fumilayo Ransom Kuti forming the Egba women, Margaret Ekpo, Moniko Abayomi, Ajia Sawaba.
All women.
Ajia Sawaba was jailed like 16 times because she was speaking truth to power, because she was disrupting order, because she felt that women had voices and their voices need to be heard. So we come even to the post-colonial era, in our independence era, you see a lot of laws that have been mentioned here, the VAP Act, the Child Rights Act, CEDAW, all of these policies, international policies and treaties, all of this will not be mentioning it now without the work of CSOs. So I think with that, we should be proud of ourselves, of the work that we've done. We will not be able to speak publicly about women's rights if not for the women that have, spoken way back before us. We call them our ancestors. right? And it's on their shoulders that we are riding on now, on their wisdom, on their activism, on their voices that we are able to, scream our own opinions and demands. So you have done a lot, and we are still doing it.
Then clap for yourself. I think that's really excellent because we are here. I went to school because of women rights advocates.
Yes.
I can read, I can write, I can have a job and get equal pay in some respects, right? That's due to women's rights organizations. So clap for them. Thank you very much. So I wanted to ask now that we know how much power we wield as CSOs. We have so much power and influence on our rights at ourselves. Am I right? We have so much power and influence. We're trying exactly. So how can we try harder? How can we try to hold state actors accountable to promoting and protecting human rights in Nigeria for all persons? How can we hold actors, state the government accountable?
So let me just quickly add to the success story. Back in the days, we know that twins were seen as bad omen, and then were killed. So thanks to Ms. Lester who ended that chaos. So I also want to thank the About Women riots. I mean, all these successes are tied to women, and a great one. So how can we hold state actors and individuals accountable for all these human rights violations? I think we need to get into the process. We need to be represented. And we need to find a way around it. There are some things that are logical. I'm not that kind of activist that's always logical about things, because I had my fair share of violations. So and I usually will go all out to defend my rights and the rights of the people that I represent. So, and I say this because there's a huge gap in knowledge. There is a success story of having a legal desk in the police station, but does it go beyond that? No. I want to see a situation where human rights can be talked about in the police station. It can be discussed in National Assembly, because I think the perpetrators of this act have huge gap in knowledge about what human rights is. And I think, just like what happened at Lekki Tollgate, I think we should begin to come together, build stronger relationships, build allies, and then begin to call out these perpetrators. There is a system we're used to in Nigeria. When we bring up a case, it just takes after a while and it's swept under the carpet, which is not a good thing. So people eventually don't get justice, So, and call people out. There is something that our legislators, these actors, do not want. They don't want these issues. They don't want the media to be talking about these violations. They don't want people to know about these violations. When you call their ass out, they will redress. Whether or not there is a huge gap in knowledge, they will redress their actions. And I think that we should also find a way to build strong relationship with the National Human Rights Commission, because they are coming up strongly in addressing human rights violations. I know in the last workshop we had, they were like, okay, you identify as a transgender woman alongside other LGBTQI plus community, but we don't get to hear any violations from you. We don't even have data of violations. But we know these things happen on a daily basis. And you will, for whatever reasons, because of the context of Nigeria, most of us will rather go into our shell and deal with all the mental trauma, mental health issues. But I think that time has changed. People are wiser, people are more informed. And I think we will also find a way to institutionalize human rights trainings. I don't know if we're going to have it. Going beyond the workshop, we'll have a one-off thing. Consistency does a lot. If we are consistent with human rights education across different places where we need to hear it, I think it will go a long way in strengthening people and giving hope And then also motivating activists that are doing this work and know that when they push for justice, they will eventually get it.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, Akakel. And I think that's really remarkable because in Nigeria, when CS collects violation reports, half of it is by state actors, by the police, by law enforcement who are profiling LGBT plus persons. So we really need to focus on holding them accountable and ensuring that they pay for whatever violation they have against minority persons and get justice for the survivors as well. Thank you very much, Akakel. So I want to ask next. So now we're talking about state actors and the parents against individuals, all of that. How about individuals and non-state actors, corporations, businesses, environmental discrimination, all of that? How do you think CSOs can go into that space as well to hold them accountable for human rights violations, promote human rights within private sector spaces as well?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm here in a representative capacity, representing the executive director of the Center for Population Health Initiatives. And we currently have a human rights project sponsored by the US Embassy. And it's basically about ensuring protection for members of the LGBTQI plus community against state actors, that's the law enforcement, and having that synergy and ensuring that their rights are protected. So to add to what you said, before I come to the question, so yeah, in the past 10 months, we've traveled across the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, basically carrying out advocacy for law enforcement agents, staff of the NHRC in all 36 states. And there's something that's been profound in all of this. I see that these people are willing to learn. They actually want to learn, but then their religious and cultural inclinations are the problem. So I would say that aside from going to have conduct advocacy visits for them, speaking to them, we still need to intensify our efforts as CSOs. Continuous education. We need to continuously partner with them. I'm happy to have the coordinator of the NHRC here, and we also have their support from the headquarters. So we need to constantly reach out to them, constantly, get in touch with them and make sure that they're also pivotal in the work that we do. So in ensuring that human rights is committed, is something that can happen in private spaces. I would say that, first off, there needs to be political participation. First, we need to be at the top to be able to change policies, to be able to make laws. So if we must go into private spaces, in offices or corporate organizations where their employment laws are discriminatory, we need to be able to do it from the top too, so that we can then descend lower and be able to implement those laws at those stages. So first, we need policies, and then we need to go into politics, not politics per se, but we need to be part of the decision-making process. So yeah, we cannot exactly, go into people's organizations and start saying, this is what I want you to do, this is what I want you to do. So first off, I think CSOs should take it upon themselves first to approach these organizations, corporate spaces, schools. Just go there for advocacy visits, speak to people, talk to them. We need to first, reorientate their minds. We need to be able to change the way they think before we can even start going into, okay, this document you have here is not sitting well with a group of people who are part of you. And I'm sure that by the time they are able to see from a different perspective, there will be a change in how we think, and then we can obviously get into talking about amending their policies.
Thank you very much, Ken. So what I hear is that there's so much work to be done, both in the state sector, government sector, private sector. We need to put in efforts in ensuring that we have uniform and inclusive policies, implementing these policies, and ensuring that human rights are protected across border. So please go ahead.
Yeah, just to add to what Tracy said, everything for us as CSOs,
I think we've been working in silos for too long, reiterating what Antonio said in that keynote and what the better person has been saying. And I think we need to really adopt intersectional and intergenerational approach centered on care. And I put care because there's a whole lot of, oh, this is sex work advocacy, that one not concerning. That's not my work. So when maybe a private institution is asserting power over a group of sex workers, civil society organizations hold hands because they say it's not part of their scope of work. And, so, but if we adopt an intersectional approach centered on care, or an intergenerational approach centered on care, we realize that until you are well as an individual, I am not well. So if we are looking at that, you are working with sex workers, you are working with LGBTQI persons, you are working with persons with disabilities, we are all interconnected and our issues are interconnected. And until you are well, that's when I'm well also. And that's the way we can move forward as peers.
Thank you very much for this. I totally agree with that because one of my favorite quotes is that was that no man is free until all men are free. So we cannot be arguing for human rights for no disabilities when there are four women that have lived in their lives already. So all of us have the same issues against one oppressor, right? We have one oppressor, so we have to work together to free ourselves from the shackles of the patriarchy, of capitalism, and of oppression in Nigeria. So I want to ask you, Justin, given Nigeria's current climate, there's unrest, there is political apathy, the government is very, very oppressive against us and abusive against us. What kind of advocacy practices should we adopt in order to advance human rights, given what we are seeing in Nigeria? If you protest, they probably take you down. If you complain on Twitter, they probably come and arrest you like Aisha Buhari arrested that boy. What can we do in kind of environment to do advocacy for human rights in Nigeria? It's a very good question, Abi.
Okay, hi everyone. So I like to say that when we talk about civil society, everybody thinks about NGOs like TS, BSI, and CPHI. Right? But then truly, civil society organizations, firstly, are trade unions, market unions, student union governments, different pressure groups who stand as a mirror to which those in powers are evaluated through. So when we also talk about interaction between governments and human rights violation, I like to think about power. I'm someone that likes to talk about power a lot. And I do not believe that there is any ethical way to wield a power that should not exist in the first place. So when you have too much of power, it brings about a lot of things that are out of your control. First of all, I like, a lot of people think I'm an anarchist, but I oppose the government to start. But then, that's not the conversation for this space. Because to break power dynamics, to break power structures, you also need power and money. Right? And these things, where they come from, also influence what you can do with them and how you can wield them. Right? So, like what you said, I think the only way for us to achieve what seems like another pattern of advocacy or activism that can speak to the government is through participatory activism. Participatory activism. Because as an activist, as a person, I can speak and say, oh, what the Americans are doing in Nigeria is not fair. They are not doing anything, I'm just saying. What the Americans are doing in Nigeria are not fair. I can say that as a person. But as an institution, that tomorrow or even currently might be needing or also collecting money from them, I'm not able to say that. Right. So we need participatory activism to be able to cushion the effect of human rights violation in Nigeria, given the civil unrest and the civic unrest, because they are both, and a whole lot of other unrests that are happening in the country. So because Nigeria is a place that I like to think of us as who have deviated from the peoplehood that we call Nigeria. Before, like the first panelist said, a lot of things were communal. When there's a human rights violation, everyone comes together and says, oh, let's throw this person to death, let's throw them to evil forest, and all of that. But now, the state has further broken into very tiny fractions that are easy to permeate, and things happen and you don't even hear them. So, but when activism is participatory, when we take on it as a we thing, it becomes lesser. Not saying, I heard someone who said, I support human rights, but then let's leave LGBTQ, there are too much of issues, let's talk about human rights. And I just raised my face in that meeting, I'm like, okay,
what exactly is human rights?
So you see, because if we only understand that there is no you without me, and there is no society without the full diversity of everyone. One thing I borrowed from the HIV space is, if you're not infected, you are affected. Because some way, the infection comes back to you, either to you personally, or to someone that you know, using a bridge population to get to you. So it's also the same thing for human rights. Because of the way society has placed us in stratas, we do not experience human rights violation in the same amount and the same effects. Rich people, poor people, power dynamics, and a whole lot of that. So I think the only way to achieve true activism and hold the government accountable is through participatory approach where everyone is involved, not leaving the work to organized civil societies. As individual, you're a civic entity and you can also speak up on issues. Like I tell people when I want to talk about LGBTQI issues, and I know that to get into this room, I might not be able to get in with my LGBTQ identity. What do? I wield the power of my heterosexual friends and families. So sometimes I just smile when I hear my mom saying, why did Qatar host the World Cup if they know they're not going to allow LGBTQ people? Shaking out their money they are collecting, game money that is going to patronize them. And I say, wow, okay. Because when we start, if you start it from family, from your close friends, you see them speaking up. And they are speaking up from their heterosexual privilege that nobody's going to discriminate against them. They are just holding it as an opinion of human rights. But you as a queer person, you want to speak up in this space, you'll be scared. Okay, when I say I am a whole lot of that. So I think participatory approach where everyone is involved is really essential to move advocacy to human rights forward.
Thank you so much. That's so profound. It reminds me of what Olivia said one time, like when you are talking about rights, you don't need one person's voice. You want people to join and talk. Don't just keep quiet. This is about you personally. It's about queer and you're not queer, that's fine. It's about the media, not the media. Just speak up and support people when they talk about their rights as well. And Toby wants to add. Go ahead.
Just to add to that, what we can do as PSO, another thing we can do, I like that you mentioned power, and we need to, adopt power as a collective. I also think we also need to produce knowledge. And I think knowledge in terms of how we write and how we theorize. So I know we do a lot of policy briefs, policy documentation, but I think we also need to rethink how we produce knowledge. Are we producing knowledge for donors and funders, or are we producing knowledge as a liberatory practice? Are we producing this knowledge to liberate ourselves and our minds, or we are just producing it to get more money to run the cycle? I think for us as PSOs, especially in Nigeria, we need to rethink our knowledge production system. We need to rethink how we theorize our values. Encourage us as African feminists to theorize, to create, to ask critical questions that we silence because of the way we accepted the norms. So I think to challenge state and non-state actors to also speak truth to power and disrupt the patriarchy, we need to produce knowledge in a way that liberates the mind, in a way that anyone that reads it, especially people that are outside of the CSO ecosystem, they read it and they're like, yes, this is it, this is what I want to do, right? And not just reading to say, these people are making money, right? So we also need to rethink how we produce knowledge in our system.
Thank you so much, Toby. So that's very important. It doesn't have to be formal or strict or difficult sometimes. Simple language or academic is like on the picture. For like Instagram or like WhatsApp, that's knowledge right there. Document that living on these informal and simple platforms. Thank you so much. Thank you, Justice. I'm loving this panel, right? So I want to ask now, it feels like we have reached the point where we know what we want, where we want to go to, but feels like impeding our progress. Let's talk about challenges in youth advocacy in Nigeria. Better we take first. Challenges about what are the things that you experience as CSO? What is stopping you from getting to where you want to go in human rights activism in Nigeria?
So for human rights activism in Nigeria, as a human rights activist in the LGBTQI plus space, the first challenge that we experience, and I'm sure everybody here will agree with me, is the SSIP.
Amen.
Yes, the SSIP, the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. So we're all working together in this space, and I'm sure we have one ultimate objective, and that is to decriminalize same-sex marriage. So I think that if that law, if we're able to get that law down, to repeal that law, we'll be able to make our advocacy even better. I mean, there will be no restriction to go further, to push, to just be us and do our work unrestricted. So if we're able to get that law out, that's the first step. Secondly, I'll say funding, finances. It's a huge setback for a lot of CSOs because, like you said, we need to reevaluate how we produce knowledge. But if we do not have this funding, how do we even print, manuals, things that can, change societal perspectives, mentalities? How do we bring that out? How do we run ads on social media if we have to, educate people via social media? So we need the finance. We're not getting enough of that, and we hope that, that can happen even more. I'm sure the media people will push this. Yes. So another thing is we lack documentation. That's a challenge because most times we don't have the accurate data. We're not able to say, okay, this is the number of people that we're working with, this is the number of people that have to go through this sort of valuation or the other. And then it also boils down to, this funding aspect. And then there's no accurate data to even give to policymakers, to take it up there to leaders at the top. So we need those data. It's a challenge because if we're not, if CPHI is saying, okay, there are 7,000 MSMs in Lagos alone, someone else within Lagos, or some other organization within Lagos is saying, no, there are 1,000. No, that doesn't make us look like a united front. So we need to change those perspectives. We need to come out with accurate data, accurate documentation.
Okay, so another thing I want to say is one of the challenges of civil society is lack of money. But then I want to also say that the lack of money or the presence of money also brings about trouble. Also causes another trouble, right? Because okay, so I would like to say something about sometimes I do not put up my opinions on a lot of things, so it doesn't seem like I'm coming from privileged basis. I just decide to be quiet, especially on feminist organizing. But then we'll pass. Let me not cite that example. I'll go to the instances of movement organizing, the challenge of civil societies as CSO, working together. Everyone, like the first panelist said, we have the issue of religion, but we see that this religion is also interpreted through cultural values. And these things affect the way civil society is organized. We've seen an organization who work for the rights of women who say that lesbian or bisexual or queer women should wait first, let them talk about the rights of women. Right. So this is not because this person does not understand the concept of who a woman is or that, but then she's now silencing these people because they are behavioral characteristics do not fit into the societal structure or our religious structure, right? So these are issues of coming together to work. We can't present a simple front and say, oh, we are human rights organization. No, they must break it. Women's human rights, LGBTQI human rights, and sex workers human rights. So these are really causing issues until we learn about intersectional justice system, where there is no justice for this person unless there is justice for everybody, right? So that's a problem. And another problem is the way about data, like she talked about. Data is dangerous. I don't know. I have a lot of chaotic ideas about a lot of things that looks mainstream. I do not, especially coming from the global health point of view, it's data informs program, it informs development and all of that. But then again, this data sometimes makes us look like we are unprogressive from issues. These data are seen as, they don't add that there are human beings behind these data. So it's always 1 in 5 women, 3 in 5 girls, 75% of national population. And you forget that these people are human beings. So how are we also knowing that data is not for citations and writing sake? Data are made to be acted upon. How are we acting upon the data that we receive? So these are the issues. Aside, now coming to the issue around money, advocacy needs money. Advocacy is money. I tell people that America did not achieve the feat they've achieved today in issues like LGBTQI rights and with going to tell people, please, now this thing you are doing is not. It came from places of evil, bad, good, to uphold human rights, right? So we just have to tell ourselves the truth. People, house members were blackmailed and say, if you support this bill, we'll bring out this part of your life. It happened. Let's not look like it does not happen. So to uphold human rights, it doesn't always come from a point of negotiation. You do not negotiate with your oppressors. Even though I agree that there are multiple angles to advocacy, but you do not negotiate with oppressors. And that is what Nigerian activism system is looking like. You have to speak to this person. Please now, I beg now, and let's not do this. Okay, you adopt it. We should remove this part. Okay, let's remove this thing from the backlog. Hence, you adopt it. Let's do that to achieve victory. But then they remove the essentialities of this act, and then they become vegetables, right? So, like in the North, I know some part of the North that removed the part of child marriage from the VAP Act. But glory be, they have adopted the VAP Act. But then the essential part that is more personal to them and that would hold them at their groins has been removed. So we tend to employ a lot of negotiative kind of advocacy in Nigeria, which is, it gives us victory at the surface level. But when you dive in deeply, it's a problem. So we need to move from protectionist advocacy, if I would call it. We need to move from protectionist advocacy into what I think is radical, because for me sometimes I say that when you tell somebody to give you money and then they give you money, like it brings me back to the feminist space I don't want to talk about, where the most money used to fight women issues come from the West, and then we know the West has been advanced in women issue, but then they still see women issue from the level that they are. They don't know that in Nigeria women still get killed for not making pap the right way. And they are giving women in Nigeria money to do political participation, when in the home a woman cannot even decide how many children she can bear. So if funding are still informed by Western ideology, it's going to be a big problem for us to use here. I'm not saying climate justice or climate change is not an issue, but is that our priority right now in the country? Right? I'm not going to shake the table, Toby. But then we need to understand that money is power, and money is also political. So we need to learn how we use money and how we put money and power. Money is power. Power is power. But then we have to learn how to put these things together to achieve a non-negotiative kind of activism. I really do not like it when we say, let's come to, it's just like in sexual assault cases, alternative dispute resolution. I do not buy that, right? Go all out. If you say this thing is bad, this abating helps us, but then at the long run, what is the price to the crime, right? It just stops the symptoms, but the disease still persists, right? So we should move from that. I think that's the problem.
Okay, thank you so very much. now we know challenges, there are many, and I just want to ask us for to say things now. We need to build a movement together, a sustainable movement that has a human rights inclusive movement. How are we going to do that? What are the tools that we need to adopt to build a movement for all human rights activists to promote human rights in Nigeria? That's my question. Okay, Toby, so before Toby, we're gonna
To set the ground, I want to read from the African Feminist Charter.
I love this charter.
The preamble, it says we define and name ourselves publicly as feminists because we celebrate our feminist identities and politics. We recognize that the work of fighting for women's rights is deeply political and the process of naming is political too. What I want to read is we have multiple and varied identities as African feminists. We are African women when we live here in Africa and even when we live elsewhere. Our focus is on the life of African women on the continent. Our feminist identity is not qualified with ifs, buts, or however. We are feminists, full stop. And I read it because we've mentioned some of the challenges we face and how we are not adopting the intersectional approach centered on care in our CSO work. And we've seen instances where CSOs talk about, oh, their problem is their problem, but their advocacy is their advocacy, and they're not looking at any other place, right? And Justin has really explained how power is political and how money is also political. Anytime I remember money is political, I remember Frida's statement. They collected Mackenzie's money and they put out a statement about how money is political, that we will collect this money, but we will use this money our own way, right? And that's speaking truth to power. But how do we do that as Nigerian CSOs and human rights activists? How do we make sure that our voices are not silenced by the powers to be and the people that give us money? How do we make sure that we collect this money, but we still use this money to do what is needed and necessary for us and not for them, right? By naming ourselves as feminists, full stop, and saying that you are a feminist, I am a feminist, that's all I need to know. That's all that matters. And you're holding my hand, I'm holding your hand, and we are saying that this fight is a collective fight. And we can't achieve one thing if we are, dividing between ourselves and grouping ourselves and doing, oh, this is your fight and this is not my fight. So we need to come together as a collective and work together. One thing I'm going to say, or two things I'm going to say is intergenerational integration, one. And I say integration because I think we need to move beyond intergenerational dialogue. I'm tired of dialoguing. I'm tired, or I think we've had enough of experiences listening to older and sharing and all of that. We appreciate, but I think we need to integrate also. We need to adopt that intergenerational integration and recognize that as much as you have your experience, we also have our lived experiences, which is as valid and same as yours. So we need to integrate in such a way that our ideas, our dreams, our theories, collaborate together to produce solutions that is transformative, that is inclusive, and that is intersectional. The next thing is the intersectionality. And I really stress intersectionality because we are far from approaching the intersectional framework in our CSO program, especially in Nigeria. Look at East African feminists. I was at the Uganda Feminist Forum earlier this year, and you could see the intersectionality in their programming. The way they all came together, the room was filled with so many people in all their diversities. And the way they spoke, no one felt less than the other person, right? We need to adopt that framework where we say that this is an issue, but how are we looking at it? Who is affected, right? Whose voice do we need to hear the most in this issue, right? And how do we make sure that we are not disempowering each other just because we want to be voice of the voiceless? Right? So much. So we need to adopt an intersectional framework in such a way that we are all empowered. That's power with. That's what Srilata Baswala said in All About Power, which I encourage everyone to read. Right? How do we make sure that we are practicing power within ourselves? and we also have power as individuals. And when we come together as collective, whatever system that we are facing, system of oppression that we go to face, we know that we are all together, right?
Thank you so very much.
Love it.
We are running off now, and I will prepare your questions if you have any. We'll take like 2 questions of the crowd. But I wanted to just turn to Akadol to ask if he wanted to highlight anything in the way for youth movement, activists, professional organizations, how to just do the movement that this has put for everybody, despite our differences.
I think in summary, I'll just say we should adopt human-centered approach. Anything we're doing, we should put a human face to it. And then that's the only way we can be free from discrimination, segregation, like we do, selective activism, selective advocacy. If it's not for this particular people, we know I'm off. And then we blame it on religion. I mean, these are the missionaries brought religion to us, and they decriminalized all these laws. Why are we still holding on to it? And then we talk about culture. I hate it when I hear culture so badly. Our culture is eating on leaves, eating local diet, and walking on bare food. The world is emerging. Now, because of the world is emerging and putting on this kind of clothes, people are really growing so fast. But there are some things, and I like to believe that some Nigerians are very hypocritical. Yes, they come to you, they negotiate things, they say, oh, you are this, you are that, I accept you, I love you. But in the public spaces, they say the opposite. So we need to move away from that mindset and be very inclusive in anything that we do. And don't look at religion. Religion and culture. Culture was actually made to put us together, to unite us together, to feel love. I don't think there's any religion anywhere in the world that preaches hate. So religious people, they bring a portion of the Bible and use it to bash you and make you feel less for who you are. But there are some scriptures that also preaches love. That preaches love. That said, even if you can call fire from heaven and you don't know how to love your neighbor, that means you've not even started. So love unconditional is what I will preach. That is where you now start looking at human beings. I know that fundamental human rights are for human beings, not for spirits or not for particular kind of human beings that are privileged or classy set of human beings. So
technologies in-house. Okay, so I just want to say that the only way to move forward to advancing human rights is pushing it to the people. It's just like what power sharing. Not holding the power as an entity or as an organization, push it to the people, and you will see how it moves, right? Push it to the people by what? Mainstreaming issues. We saw how mainstreaming. I want to by making issue known to everybody, by personalizing issue. We saw it in the cross-dresser bill when people were thinking that this bill. We saw it in the cross-dresser bill when people were thinking that this bill is for transgenders. And then we took the bill and we're saying, okay, let's even see what the bill talks about cross-dressing. And we say, oh, you said that is Oba of whatever, you the tie wrapper, so you are cross-dressing, so it affects all of us. Oh, you that is a boy that is wearing dread and putting earrings, you are cross-dressing. So by then we have made the issue, remove it from transness and make it a people implicating issue. By culture or by whatever, Africa is androgynous by nature. I like to say that. Africa is androgynous in the sense that I think we even have, digging into African history, we have this third gender, even fourth genders in the African culture, if only we tell ourselves the truth. But then colonization and all of that does this voting to us. So I think if we push power to the people, give power to people through education of the communities, they will be able to champion these causes by themselves. It will outlive these organizations that are championing the causes. So I think we need to move the power to the people, educate them and bring them in, and not using them seeing them as just beneficiaries. I hate the word beneficiary. It's problematic in the sense that you see people as you're doing them a favor. Why it is power sharing is very important, and language in advocacy matters. When you call people beneficiary, call people whatever, it's harmful to the way you see them, right? So language in power. So we should use languages like sharing power with people and not calling them beneficiary, call them rights holders. So when these things are given to them, you understand that they also have a responsibility to protect and live for themselves and not you acting as the savior. Right.
Thank you so very much, everybody. I can see one person's hand. And another person does not have a question. I can't get it on my hand. Only see one hand and one hand there. Oh, crap. Okay, three. Okay, let's go to Eidayo. I saw Eidayo's hand there.
Hi everyone. Okay, hi. Thank you for putting me on. All right. So my question is specifically to Justin and to the and about accountability mechanisms in civil society and how exactly. I mean, a lot of interesting and insightful things have been said here, and intersectionality, human-centric frameworks. How exactly are we ensuring that there is more like a rule book to abide by towards ensuring that we are actually championing human rights in the way human rights should be championed? Because over the years we've had various frameworks, various mechanisms in work, and it has led us to where we are. While we are counting significant change that has happened, we are also, talking about the things that are yet to be done. And with the introduction of newer frameworks, how exactly are we ensuring accountability as well as like a mechanism, like a structure within the civil society space and organizing?
Okay, so just quickly, I like to say when we talk about accountability, for everyone here would agree it's always about money that people think. When we talk about accountability, people think, oh, money, how are you going to be accountable? But I like to think about accountability as a moral issue rather than a system of checks and balances. Because if people are not morally positioned to know between wrong and right, no matter the amount of systems you put in place to check them, they would not adhere to this system. So accountability is a moral issue that you need to imbibe within you to say that, okay, this is wrong. Okay, this is the right thing. Let me do it. How am I doing it? How am I using my power? You are being accountable. How am I sure that I'm not taking too much space? I'm also giving spaces for the voice of the voicelesses. So we need to know that accountability is moral, and that as you're pointing one hand, the other four is pointing at you. So I see accountability as a moral issue, or more than a system of checks. Okay, if you come to work by 9, or you sign. I'm bringing this to practical. If you come to work by 9, sign. Okay. Some people will come and say, oh, they didn't know their watch was not working. They're not signing 8:30. Because they do not have this moral conviction to be accountable to time management, right? So if it's moral, it behoves you to keep these things. I just want to say, simply put, accountability is a personal conviction. No matter the amount of systems you put, if you don't have it, you don't have it.
Thank you.
Accountability is a moral issue. Then for CSOs, especially in Nigeria, since we are talking in Nigerian context, I think also accountability is a collective issue as much as it's a moral issue and an individual issue. So there's something that in the feminist space that we say, how do we make sure that we build an organization which is soul, right? And we say that because we want to recognize the soulfulness, what's the essence of this organization? And most of the CSOs they have institutions, they have governance, they have staff, they have structure in a way that people follow policies that they abide by. But how do we, for CSOs that have organizations or they have operating systems, how do we make sure that within that organization, just do to TS, for example, or ESI, just one organization, how do you make sure that your own organization, soul song, reflects everybody in that organization? So you say you work on disability projects, right? But you don't even have ramp in your own organization. You don't have spaces where people can just go to relax, to chill, or to just ease their muscle and all of that. You say you are an LGBTQ-led organization. You do projects around that, but you don't even have spaces where they can come, they can't even come to your organization to say, oh, they want to just talk or rant, or it's not a safe space. And people are, I don't want to start shaking tables, but you know how these things goes in the organization. Or you say you're a feminist-led organization, but your environment is toxic. your staff are complaining, and when it comes to horrible bosses on Twitter, your staff are there calling you out and dragging you, right? That's accountability. How do we make sure that as individual organizations, we have soul songs, organization songs that reflect everyone in that organization? Because it's from there that we carry it to the movement, right? So as individual organizations, I think accountability can be collective, and it can be collective when organizations are intentional about their organizational song.
Thank you very much, Toby. So we'll go on.
Question?
Okay, let me ask the next question. We have two questions. Thank you very much. Where's the microphone? Yeah, passing it to you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so my question is to Toby. Yes. So I wanted to ask, we understand that intersectionality is important, especially in civil society organization spaces. But how do we, or how can we promote this intersectional approach? My question is very short. Yeah.
Thank you. Your answer is also very short and
Okay, so the term intersectionality was first coined by a black person, Kimberly Crenshaw, and she coined intersectionality because I think she was handling a case of a black person, of a black woman, and she saw that this case is beyond her being just a woman, but it's also about her being a black woman, right? Because she recognized that there are multiple identities that overlap and also, you know, interact with the multiple systems of oppression that we have in our daily living. So intersectionality is you saying that, oh, this is a venue that we want to use for our event. How accessible is it for our participants? How many participants are we calling? Persons with disability, can they come in? Can they access this place without any issue or with, you know, or without complaint or all of that? Intersectionality is saying that the toilets, do they have sanitary pads? Because women can be on their period, or is there like, you know, you go outside now, you see condoms and lubricants. I told Alex that you don't even need to give me food, right? I'll just pack all of that and go home, right? So it's because they understand that these are the needs that our participants would have. Let's provide that. Intersectionality is saying that, oh, you are reading a case and you're not just saying that, oh, it's all these straight women, or it's all these gay people, right? Or they don't have work, or why are they doing this, or why are they crowdfunding, or why are they, you know, opening GoFundMe. But you're saying that you recognize the systems of oppression that makes it difficult for poor people to live or to even access decent jobs in Nigeria because of their sexuality or because of their gender expression, right? So intersectionality recognizes the multiple identities we have as individuals and say that the way we react or the way we experience life with the systems of oppression that we have makes it difficult for us to live in silo without, except if we live in a world where these systems of oppression don't exist. But for the fact that they exist, we have to program in an intersectional framework as CSOs in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Toby. In Nigeria, it means that recognize that somebody can be queer, disabled, poor, and a woman. So we are programming to cater to everybody's identities and how they intersect with poverty, lack of education, homelessness, physical disabilities, queerness, and then being a woman. All of those things. Even if you're a man and then you're trans, so there are so many things that come into play as Toby has explained. Now we'll go.
Alright, so mine is going to be a comment on the question.
Oh no.
So I understand that what we are doing here is to, you know, try to bring awareness, create awareness, and to remove all the restrictive laws that limit people's rights, right? So mine is, after this, what next? Because I understand that. So my question is this: I know that a lot of work has been done, for instance, in the HIV space. A lot of awareness has been created. Yet there's a case I'm currently handling, 2022. In 2022, some people are still being discriminated for in the workplace.
I'm being sacked because they have HIV. And I'm handling that matter right now. And these companies are very obstinate, refusing to even come to do out-of-court settlement. So my question is, what are the civil society spaces doing when it comes to litigating already guaranteed rights? Because there's the HIV Anti-Discrimination Act already. So assuming we do all these things to remove restrictive laws, and then there are laws that give rights, what are the spaces doing to, what are these organizations doing to litigate those rights? Because it goes to what Justin said. Our advocacy should not be a pay-go. If you don't push it, nobody is going to respect these rights, even when they are in paper. So what are the spaces doing to litigate already existing rights?
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay.
You quite answered the second question yourself by saying that we need to test the law. Exactly, right? So for us as PSOs, I think that's something we reiterated here, that we need to test the law. The ones that work, how are we using them, right? So that, I think that's just for them. And then the first one that you said that after this what next, I think after this what next, let's not overthink it. After this what next, we go home, we share what we've learned here, we practice what we've learned here. Right outside this door, once you see something that it's not inclusive, it's not intersectional, you say it. When you get to your private environment or in a public space, you make sure that you are not silent, because silence is also very political and it's also a tool for oppression, right? So what next? Let's not overthink and say, what are the CSOs now doing now? Are they going to another hotel to talk about all of these things? No, we are not. We are going to our homes to continue fighting the patriarchy, because that's what we'll be doing every day. So you either join us or we'll come to meet you to fight you when we get to you.
Amen. And I think just to add that you can only test the law by having real life cases like what you have now. You know, when you're going to go to the court to test a law if you haven't been briefed or about to be briefed, or there's a particular survivor or victim in question, that give us local standard, right? So this case is a primary example of how you can test that act. If the person decides to go to court, you can't push a victim to go to court, you know that as well. So people walk around these boundaries as well, and it's like a piecemeal progress. It's baby steps, not stepping step, but baby steps as well. So well done, I thank you for all the work that you do.
So also to add to that, so who are CSOs? They are a group of people formed into an organization to protect certain interests. And it begins with one person, and then we all come together. And it also begins with you as a person, me as a person. So we sit here and we talk about getting into politics, being at the leadership where we can make policies and make laws. What have you done yourself? Have you tried to champion some certain cases at the grassroots level? Yeah. You have a what do you call? You belong to a political party at the grassroots level too. You just need to start something, anything, as long as it's something you're interested in, yes.
It could be anything, yes.
Yeah, it could be anything, not just it could be anything. Be in the media space, just put your voice out there. In as much as we keep partnering with the likes of the National Human Rights Commission, law enforcement agents, LSACA, at the end of the day, we need to take up spaces for ourselves. It's our fight. We need to do this fight ourselves. Justice said something that we don't always have to negotiate with our oppressors. Yes, I agree with that. Sometimes we have to go with a radical approach. That's the way we can achieve results in certain circumstances. So after here, what next? We're not just going to go back and say, oh, I came for TS program. No. Let's make little efforts, and we're doing something, trust me. And people are saying
what
it.
we've learned, and practice what we heard and what we learned. Thank you so much to my panelists. We have come to the end of the second session. And now, we go to item 7. I was joking.
Whoa.
Okay, now the next thing on our agenda is okay, so now we'll go to the list of why we are actually here. The report. The 2022 Human Rights Violation Report that was compiled and written by TS.
There you go.
By Olga Maria.
Thank you so much. applause for the amazing Ohosu. All right, thank you so much. I'm just waiting for the technical team to project the reports. All right, maybe I'll just start and hopefully the technical team would project shortly. So there are actually two reports that we're going to launch today. The first one is the violations report, and then the second one is the social perception survey. But I will talk about that probably after the legislative theatre. It's been 8 years since TS started documenting and receiving violation reports. What do we mean by violations and maybe even reports? Are we together? Right. Violations are human rights abuses, basically, that occur because of someone's perceived or real sexual orientation. There are so many violations that have been documented that have existed against women. We've had so many violation reports against girls. But hardly would you see in Nigeria a violations report on the basis of real or perceived sexual orientation. And I'm happy to say that TS is actually the first organization documenting these reports. 8 years now and counting. You might be wondering, what exactly do we do with these violations when we receive them? First of all, we partnered with 9 other organizations situated in different parts of the country, right? Because as you may know, TS is only physically in Lagos. But there are so many violations happening around Nigeria, in the north, in the east, in the west. In fact, if you think about it, there are actually no legal, social, or economic issues that affect the general public that does not affect LGBT plus persons. As a matter of fact, those violations triple, because if every other person is dealing with poverty, imagine what an LGBT person is going through. An LGBT plus person is probably dropped out from school because their family are saying, oh, we cannot have a gay child or we cannot have a lesbian child. So therefore, we can no longer pay your school fees. I don't know how many of you is aware, but we did also have something called the emergency fund, which tries to help people in emergency situations because of their, an emergency that has occurred because of your sexual orientation or your gender identity, right? Why is it important for us to do this work? If you have a government that has instituted, discriminatory laws against a particular group of people, it means that the government does not care about this group of people. And there are so many research to show that in any given society, all over the world, there are at least 50% of the population that have at one point or the other been queer. So your queerness may not be, oh, I only like man. It could be you are attracted romantically to both genders or no genders. So I think that the misconception has always been the fact that we think being heterosexual or being straight means that you don't have a sexual orientation. Sexual orientation actually belongs to everybody. Everyone is born with a sexual orientation. Or everyone decides to choose which sexual orientation that they want. I'm very deliberate in my words because I know that there are a lot of cis persons here who feel like, oh, I cannot be gay. But what about that your brotherly love? What about David in the Bible? How many of us know about the story of David and Jonathan? Right? We know about the story of David and Jonathan, right? So even though the Bible might not have said, oh, maybe David and Jonathan had sex, but there's a romantic relationship there, whether you like it or not. So sexual orientation is not something that is just limited to persons who identify as gay, persons who identify as lesbians, or persons who identify as trans persons. It's important to gather these violation reports because when we have this evidence, when we're able to document these incidences, these life-threatening incidences, then we're able to use them to advocate for human rights. Early this year, I don't know how many of you were aware of this, a young man was actually killed in his own home.
Up till now, nobody has found out who killed him. He was killed and wrapped up in his a rug that was in his house. Right? You might be wondering, maybe he deserved it. But how many of us actually deserve being killed for the choices that we make or for being who we are? Because sexual orientation is about who you are, right? Your gender identity is about who you are, right? A lot of us enjoy so many privileges. You might be saying, oh, Nigeria is bad. But how many of you have actually been denied access to healthcare because of your perceived sexual orientation, your perceived gender identity? How many of you have been denied access to your own money because, you know, they feel like you don't look like what you look like? I'm going to give you some instances of the violation report that we received this year. Someone that lives in Lagos, Nigeria, did a queer pride event, and then his family got a hold of it. And then they deceived him to come to the northern part of the country. When he got home, his sister deceived him to go to a hospital to say, please follow me to this hospital, I'm not feeling too well. When they got there, the plan was actually to kidnap him and keep him at the mental institution. And it took 2 months and heavy pressure for us to be able to get him out of, you know, the mental home that he was kept by his parents because they don't want him to do queer work or because they are trying to change their sexual orientation. Last year, actually this year, we launched a report on conversion practices, which is the idea that somebody can change your sexual orientation, somebody can change your gender identity. In that report, we spoke to more than 2,000 people, and 90% of that number said conversion practices does not work. In our engagement with religious leaders, sorry I'm diverted because all of this work is interconnected, right? In engaging with religious leaders, when we said, do you think you can change somebody's sexual orientation? They were happy to say, yes. We know one pastor that changed somebody's sexual orientation. They even quoted TB Joshua on the TV. I'm happy to tell you that the broadcasted image for TB Joshua is actually fraud because I personally know those persons, right? And they actually confided in me that they were paid to act those roles. When we presented these facts to the religious leaders, and we said, can you actually change somebody's sexual orientation? If we bring a straight person to you, let's not even use a queer person now, right? Can you change if somebody say, I'm a man, I like women, can you make that person like men? They said they cannot do that one. So why do you think you can change the one that is gay? At least we should practice what we preach, right? Anyway, back to violations report. So documenting this report basically helps us to negotiate and make better lives or make better advocacy for human rights of sexual minorities, both locally, both within our immediate environment, both to the National Human Rights Commission, and even to the African Commission and the UN. I'm so happy that, you know, NHRC representative is here, because through the work of TEARS and many of our partners, we are able to now say NHRC is documenting human rights abuses on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. As of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we did not have this. It means that what we are doing is actually working, right? All right, great. Now, to go to the statistics, we had more than 500 incidences of human rights abuses on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity this year. This number does not or cannot even compare to the number of violations that actually happen in Nigeria. This is just the ones that we were able to document because someone was, you know, bold enough or trusted us enough to, you know, share their encounters. For every one human rights abuse that we document, there's 10 more that we are yet to even document, right? So please, what I really ask us to do is this. When we upload our violations report on our website, I will please ask that you share it with your contacts. Share it with your religious leaders. Does anyone deserve to be killed? Does anyone deserve to be murdered? Does anyone deserve to be blackmailed? This, which also leads me to another thing. I I feel like the constitution is actually the major problem that we have in Nigeria because it assumes the role that, cisgender heterosexual men are superior to women and queer persons, right? And because of that background or that backdrop, a lot of our laws feel, or lawmakers feel like it's okay for them to make discriminatory laws. It's not okay to criminalize someone's existence. It's not okay to criminalize the way someone is born, right? Because at the end of the day, what are you achieving, right? Even if we have 10% of Nigerian population as LGBT, that is, the last election says we're about 180, 200 million, right? It means that we are wiping away about, how many? 18 to 20 million people. And if democracy is actually, on the basis of freedom, equality, or justice, then are we going to wipe away 20 million? Are we going to say kill 20 million people? We can't do that, right? So please, in all your advocacy, I don't know if you are here as an activist or, even as a queer person, please engage with our, violations report because there are so many information that is entailed in it that can be useful. Thank you so much.
We love you.
Thank you so much, Remy, for that. Okay, so now, as Remy said, this report is very important for documenting the influences of people in Nigeria. It will be on TN's website today. Right, Remy? It's available already. The report. Put it up today, and then you can copy the link and share it to CSOs, to human rights agencies, to your family, and to your friends. Right now, we'll move to the next item, which is the Muslim library, and it will be posted by Kunshaw and Tim Duma are going to go